Hello, Lisa. Oh, you're muted.
It is stormy up here.
Yeah. We're in exciting times, Lisa.
My brother lives in Florida. He's a weather nut. And he sent me a text yesterday saying, oh, you're getting one of those, what did they call it? A Godzilla storm or something like that again.
Yeah.
But the wind, we have so many trees. It's like big adventure always.
So I think I live in one of the coolest places ever. They're doing a Bob Ross charity event. And it's only a couple blocks from my house. And
how could you not go?
It's from 7 o'clock to 10 p.m. And
that sounds hilarious.
Yeah. So the sponsor is Lagunitas Brewery. And all the paintings that are sold go to a charity. I don't even know what the charity is. It
doesn't matter.
Cats something. It's something about cats and saving cats in the area.
It just sounds like fun.
I'm like, I'm in. I am in.
Don't even take any pictures, because I have a total vision in my head of what this is going to look like. Oh.
Which is I think what's fun about it, and we might be able to do something with it. Bushwick has like underground newspapers and like email lists with weird things like this, where we could have an event. And
I was just saying, I think we found a place to list something.
Exactly.
Oh. Well, we're a few minutes early, and we know our crew always shows up at 3:01.
That's right.
I see Dustin's on there, but he is muted.
So you didn't like the orange, huh?
I actually did, until I realized what else it was. I think definitely for October.
Yeah. It could be a themed thing.
Yeah.
Where each month it just changes.
April would have to be green.
That's right. April's green. February's black. Black on black.
Which it should be.
Yeah.
The dreary month of February.
Red. I think red for December. Or you can do like a candy cane, red and green.
It's like Google.
Just change it every day.
Change it.
Pretty close. Hello, Frederick.
Hey, Josh. How are you doing? Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Frederick. How are you?
Great. Thanks. How about yourself?
Good, thanks.
Good.
Have any big plans for the weekend?
Myself?
Yourself?
No, I've got, well, I guess the calendar is just still kind of full with meetings. So it's not a weekend. It's more just 2 more days of work.
There you go.
Yeah, but that's okay.
And then after today, you're going to have like 3 podcasts going, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm getting excited about. That I came to learn from the master. And there he is.
You came to unlearn what you.
Oh, that's
what
right.
Telling
That's
about.
right. I love that new name, by the way. That's great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
It's a team effort between Lisa and our creative director. That's true, actually. Andre, hello, sir.
Hello there, folks. Can you guys hear me okay?
Can.
Yeah.
All right.
Look, a little low, actually, but
All right, let's work on that a little bit here. How about that? Better?
Yeah, that's better.
yes, it is.
All right, all right. Good. Thank you, folks. There you go. Perfect.
We all just need a microphone like Andre. That's the key.
It's the first rule of podcasting is get the microphone and have the pop filter on it.
All right. Well, it's 3:01, and as always, we are intentional about our time, as well as being curious. And the curiosity in me is about to burst through my skin on what Andre has to share with us today. And as we start filling up here, we'll go ahead and get started. So, Andre, welcome to Unlearnings, and and you're in sunny Austin, Texas, correct?
That is correct. Thank you, Josh, for the invitation. Thank you, Lisa, too. Happy to be here.
Good. We're glad you're here. And so let's just jump right in. What is your assertion?
My assertion is audio is the new frontier of marketing, and that has major implications for us as individuals, for brands, and why not? Let's talk about Alt MBA too. What are the implications of that for Alt MBA?
It's perfect. And I think that's the reason why we're all here and we chimed in. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor for the next couple of minutes to break this down for us. What do we need to know, and why you had this inspiration and this insight?
Sounds good. Folks, I am Andre Piazza, Alt MBA 4, Austin, Texas. And today's a sunny day in Austin. Today's talk, we're going to cover a few topics. We're definitely going to cover that piece of, why is audio so relevant for marketing for us as people. And but before we get there, I wanted to invite you into a couple things. First, for interaction. So if you're, in Zoom now, get ready to type stuff into chat. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions as we go here. And the other invitation is to go on a journey to understand how humanity has evolved, their patterns of creating and consuming information in entertainment. So in order to do that, let's start with the very beginning of it, which was the auditorial tradition. So through millennia, this is how human beings created new information and share that. And also how they kept and stored that information through oral tradition, right? That was the case, since the inset of humanity. And that was the case, this is still today, this is how humans shaped each other's narratives. And that is the way also that the fate of a lot of peoples around the world were determined by these oral traditions, by these mutual shared and beliefs. Then there were books, And books were a revolution because people could be communicating everything that they wanted, and they could keep that much, much longer, all that information and all those things that they had to share. But there was a problem with books. It was really hard to keep up with them. So someone thought they had a solution for that, and that was selling you something that was composed of 20 plus very large books, very heavy, and they were supposed to be the single source of truth about events, about people that happened in the past. And each one of us would subscribe and receive every year another one of those large books in which they would be telling us about the things that happened over the last year, and also about the things that they had made mistakes before in their previous printed editions. So that was not convenient, but it was a source of truth about humanity, information, what happened. There was another thing that became very relevant to people. It was not only the truth about events and others, but the truth about the right here, right now. So this is, about geography, location, and this is about what's happening right now and what is relevant to the people around that. Another revolution, another thing that people subscribed to and people paid attention to, and leaders were formed. In parallel to all that, as much as we had access to paper, we could be keeping up diaries in which we would be developing our own lists. We would be, jotting down our own realities, developing our own narratives and worldviews over time. And, this is interesting because this is the source of truth to each one of us. This is your personal source of truth right here in a diary. So it's no surprise that the moment that people had access to digital media, one of the things that flourished and bloomed were blogs in which you could be keeping up this personal source of truth in the digital medium. Well, in parallel to all that, there were other forms of medium that were other forms of media that were expanding over time. So we have here two of them: the radio and a phone. The radio was important because we could be getting information about the right here, right now, but that could be possibly extended to much larger people that were very, very far. So it had a reach that were very much, expanded over what a printed media could have as far as the right here, right now. And it was the source of truth in which you could not only cover the right here, right now much faster, but you could actually add, bring back that component of storytelling and auditorial tradition. The phone was a solution for the fact that people wanted to communicate one-on-one, and that could break the dimensions of space. It could be chatting with someone simultaneously and exchanging information. Well, that was also about to be disrupted. So, the journey to disruption to that particular type of media starts with an iPod. We could be talking here about the company, the brand that put this together. We could be talking about the design. We could be even chatting about Steve Jobs and Jonathan Ive. But here, what's really interesting about this are two very unsung things. Number one, this device was 100% dedicated to entertainment. And number two, in the picture, we have something that people take for granted, which is an earphone. Before Apple came with that earphone, this is how earphones used to be. They would come in a very, you could be taking everywhere, and they would be, pretty much this size. Very comfortable, these ones, by the way. And this is how much cable that was involved in that process. So not something that you could be carrying around easily. And by the way, look at this thing. This is like, something that you can probably plug on the wall almost, it's gigantic. So that was a revolution. And that was, the iPod was so successful. And part of the reason why it was so successful was the fact that they were able to develop earphones that we could take anywhere. So remember that when we're going through our journey through audio, right? There were a couple of other steps, through there, but really this image is telling you that if there was no iPod, there wouldn't be an iPhone. And without an iPhone, there wouldn't be any kind of smartphones nowadays. So iPod, an entertainment device, highly focused in audio, was the precursor to all this revolution that happened in terms of smartphones. You can see from the picture, how sizes developed and how capabilities, especially information. Look at the size of this screen and the very finite amount of information that you could fit in this screen. And look at this, the amount of colors and the amount of information that you can carry in your pocket right there. Very convenient. So in parallel to all this, there was another revolution happening in terms of television, which was an evolution from the radio, right? Because it was able to keep up with the right here, right now, at the same time, reach even broader locations. But there was something about the TV, which was, it was extremely expensive for them to be able to generate media for this type of device. And it was fairly non-inclusive, right? Because you needed to make a large investment. So that type of media was in the hands of just a very few people that controlled the stories that we were being told all day long, the type of news. Our source of truth was what these very few people decided to tell and put in front of us, right? Well, things also got disrupted here until a couple of guys came up with a YouTube in which you could be uploading your own digital information, and that would be kept in their own servers. And that became a massive change, right, that we're still experiencing nowadays through social media. Well, there's something else brewing in terms of audio, and now we're going to understand, why audio is really that type of, revolution in terms of marketing for people and brands. It all started with Siri, right? It came to our phone. It was funny and entertaining to get her into the spot, right? She wouldn't be able to respond to us, or she would come up with, interesting lines. Then there was Alexa, and there was also Cortana, and then there were the devices that followed, right? Amazon, Alexa, Echo being the first one, with a very interesting design, 360 degrees, supposed to be following you around, every single room that you were. So they can capture information 360 and they can deliver information also 360 into that space. No surprise that, the recently launched Apple HomePod does the very same thing. It is 360. It has audio capabilities and microphones really 360. So it is supposed to be, sitting everywhere we are. And before we really understand, what's happening here in terms of trends, let's talk about Gary Vee. Probably all of you know Gary Vee. In case you don't, meet Gary Vee. And I'm going to ask you to type on the chat, what is Gary Vee doing in this picture? Keep it simple, just want to get, perspective coming from you at this point. Do we have any entry on the chat? Is it just me, or we don't have chat enabled here?
Andre, I don't see the chat button either, so I think we're going to have to chat this one out loud.
Let's do it. Keep it short, 1 or 2 words. What is Gary Vee doing here?
Blogging.
Okay, what else?
Documenting.
Documenting, all right, sounds good.
Attention.
Attention, good. Like all those angles. What else, folks? Do you see how about the yellow cab in the background? What does that tell you? He's in New York, right? Big time.
Commuting.
Commuting, right? Okay, he's on the go, fantastic, right? So you could be saying things like, hey, he's listening, he's getting entertainment. You can say even things about, where he's going and all that, right? If you know Gary Vee, you know that he is hustling, right? That's his thing. That's what Gary Vee does. But there is another thing that is very remarkable about this. What else is Gary Vee doing here? And let's get that angle of attention. What's happening here?
Andre, can you put that photo up again, please?
Oh, yeah. Here we go. So Gary Vee here, right? What else is he doing?
He's very likely documenting his life or whatever he's doing right away.
Cool. He likes vlogging. He likes, connecting, Facebook Live, Instagram stories, all that kind of stuff. But what is remarkable about this picture is that Gary Vee is hustling, and while he's doing his thing, he's consuming information and entertainment on his very own terms. And this is why audio is the next thing. This is why audio is so powerful. It is because it's non-intrusive. You have 100% of control over what you're consuming and when you're consuming that. And by the way, you could be multitasking. You can be doing your thing. You could be driving. You could be, going from a place to another. You could be even chatting with others, right? While you keep consuming that type of information, right? So it's extremely convenient. You have 100% of control, and this has major impact. The impact of storytelling in human beings, right? We know for a fact that this activates the areas in which, we see reality and we create and shape our own narratives. So that is why audio is the next thing in terms of marketing, because not only there's all these levels of convenience and control that are given to people and not to the brands, unlike television, unlike other medium like, social media, fully consumed with what people are paying ads to. This is what you choose to do. And this is what is going to be happening next, right? Let's circle back into the story of a device. Someone cut the cord of the earphone, and they call that the earpod. So, that is a sign that there is something happening here. They want you to be plugged into audio all the time. I came across this picture very recently. So this is a professional, and he's got something around his neck that is speaking to him as he does his own thing. So elements of convenience that are just breaking through right in front of us, right? So let's talk a little bit about podcasts, which, let's not fool ourselves. It's not the only type of medium when it comes to audio, but it's a major one. And let's do that, vocal check with you. How many people listen to podcasts on a monthly basis in the US? US only? How many people listen to podcasts in the US? Numbers.
Can you give us a range?
Yeah, millions, several.
Several million?
Several millions, I think dozens. I'm starting to give away the answer.
Wow.
All right, folks. Yeah, go for it. All right.
I don't know, you said dozens, so I just thought, I don't know, maybe 24 million, 36 million?
Good. Multiples of 12. I like that. Let's think a little larger than that. Research is telling us that 67 million people in the US alone listen to podcasts. 42 of those, which is not a multiple of 12, but it's very close, right? 42 of those listen to podcasts weekly. This is major, folks. I'm not going to go into the details, of all these stats. I'm going to leave behind my presentation so you can learn about all these details. But the major point here is that in average, those 47 million people listening to podcasts weekly listen to in average to 4 or 5 hours of podcasts. Many episodes, many different podcasts, but they listen to that for 5 hours. So this is a major venue for you to tell your stories and shape people's narratives and worldviews that at the end of this conversation, I'm going to invite you to reflect on as alt MBAers, right? So that presents a tremendous opportunity, not only for brands to shape the way that we see things, we perceive our problems, and how they could actually come in with, proven solutions for those problems, right? Which is, the marketing and sales problem, but also how we as individuals perceive and experience reality, right? 5 hours. To what do you devote 5 hours? For what do you consent to give 5 hours of your time and your attention to, right? This is tremendous. So I'm just gonna go over and wanted to show you this visual here in terms of content marketing. Some of you are related to this. Some of you, are not really interested, but, 3 big circles here. One for one media, in which, we own and control what we create. Another one that is paid, in which we have to pay some kind of media or vehicle to feature. And finally, the one that is earned, and that reflects how people react to the things that we told them before, and their experience with our personal brands, right? For example, right here, right now, this is earned media for me. I was invited, right? There were reasons why I got invited here, right? So that part of the experience is really interesting because it's unlimited and it's also very trustworthy, right? What people are talking about a product, right, after they have experienced that has major impact into how we make a purchase decision, which is something that people are paying, right, vehicles to influence us, right? But here's where the audio opportunity really is, which is, your own media, right? So if you're a brand, you could be creating content that people spend several hours in a captive audience, and you're going to be shaping the way that they perceive the world. And you're going to be creating and bonding over the realities that you're talking about in their experience as well, right? Several brands are going through that process of establishing podcasts, sometimes even, paying another company to create a podcast for them. Now in the beginning, few examples here, NASA, Purina, and Walt Disney Company. I do not know about you, but one of my biggest disappointments was to realize, as a kid, that Mickey Mouse had that type of voice. So I'm hoping that in their podcast, Mickey Mouse doesn't speak, right? Here's another example that I ran into yesterday, which is, big brand in the US, Charles Schwab, financial company, right? Talking about investment advice, banking, trading, investing, right? And they put together a podcast that is pretty much made by one of the Heath brothers, right? Dan Heath. They wrote Made to Stick, Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard, Decisive, and they have, the Power of Moments book now. Very good stuff, highly capable guy talking about decisions and behavioral economics, which is something that the brand Charles Schwab is interested in creating a connection and trust with, right? As far as people, as I promised you, we have also an opportunity, right? This is our opportunity to showcase thought leadership via audio, because just like we are in this situation right now, you're listening to me. You're getting all this information and you're either connecting, challenging in your own mind, or you're having a reaction of, I wanted to know more about this. What else do you have to tell us, Andre? Tell us about that. It was super nice when you were talking about all these things, right? And finally, people, this is how I'm going to be opening up for, Q&As. And also, for your feedback, right? Because let's make it, not, a very auditory experience here, right? Alt MBA wise, one of the things that really caught my attention as I was concluding Alt MBA was, so what is the process that Seth asked us to trust as the very first thing? What is that thing? And we even had a conversation during Alt MBA 4, in which people were, in this situation right here, right? Zoom, and people were sharing, hey, my view of the process was this. This is what I gathered and all that. So I went back and I started to listen to Seth when he was giving a talk on video, or in moments that he was actually going into a podcast. So I did a whole lot of that. And I was paying attention to, his routines and how he described what was the process. So in short, I'm going to put out a definition of what the process is, which is, you evolve your own narratives and worldviews by writing as frequent as you can, to the point that you're being transformed in the process. You step up, you level up in the process, right? So that is one way, and I'm not saying that this is the only one. This is something that, comes across very consistently when you listen or read Seth Godin. And my invitation to you is, how us, all MBAers, how can we use this medium, podcasts, to evolve our own worldviews and narratives in a way that is not only me talking my things, but also in a way that I'm interacting with more people. I'm going to leave you with that. Let's see what you have to say.
Thanks, Andre. Looks like we had some technical difficulties, but we are alive and well. Maybe this is the moment where video has started to lag a little bit. So you mentioned what a couple of your inspirations were: Gary V, noticing what he's doing, and Seth noticing what Seth has been doing. Are there any other individuals outside of the Gary V, Seth Godin sphere? Charles Schwab, which is large. What are some other smaller, I guess, peers? Someone that we might not know about that's been real successful with this or is starting to do it.
There is very wide offering of podcasts. There are immense variety of not only topics but also formats, right? Interviews, one-on-one monologues, right? A mixed format that seems to be a radio. And there was another podcast recently called A Serial that was really storytelling and mixed. Essentially, it was a fact, an event in the past that happened, a murder, and they were actually going around and telling the story in a variety of different perspectives, right? So 100% storytelling. So my suggestion would be, go search for people that are doing podcasts, find your own influencer doing that, right? Which is natural migration. Hey, we read Seth for years. Now Seth has a Kimbo just launched, right? Why would Seth, the guy that chose to skip social media entirely, going to be investing into podcasts? That is something that we got to think about. So overall suggestion is find your own influencer, or just start listening to podcasts and find what works for you, what interests you, right? And go from there.
Thanks. I think one insight that I take from this, or assertion, that we've been talking about a lot in terms of Unlearnings, is the smallest viable audience. And what does that look like, right? Because a lot of times we shoot for the moon and say we're going to be like Coca-Cola, right? How many people can we reach like Coke? But what about the smallest viable audience? And I think that's where this group kind of comes in.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question. So there are multiple types of advice. One way of doing this is self-define, and keep insisting on it until people find you and people stick with you because they know you and you are being genuine, right? So that in a way is very similar to what Seth has been talking about. You're blogging, you're being authentic and real with yourself to the point that actually that attracts attention because you're not only being genuine, but you're showing up consistently. But there is something out in, there is the other one, which is, look, I'm going to talk about topic X, let's say, in my podcast, entrepreneurship. Who are these people? Who is this audience? And then I try to talk about their problems, the ways that, it's possible to solve that. In other words, you focus on that and you keep your eyes into the audience, right? I think there is truth to both type of processes. And I want to show you something here that is something that probably is like, how both of these threads comes together, which is, and I'm not finding right here right now, which is too bad, right? When you're on the spot, you just cannot find your stuff, right? Story of my life, but it's essentially that thing that, people say, look, for the first year, do not expect anything. You're going to be talking to, dozens of people, right? Let's just stick with that number, multiples of dozens, right? And then over the years, you start seeing that inflection in exponential growth, right? I'm back. So what that chart shows you is that, successful podcasters had very minimal audiences in the first, 12, 18 months. And they were able to grow from there because, they really had a format. They were consistent. People trusted them. They knew better what they were doing at that point, right? So I think, that there is truth in both sides. What you need to know is like, realistically what to expect. And I think that was really your question, Josh.
Great. Thanks, Andre. We have about 15 minutes for other questions. Otherwise, I will keep asking questions.
I don't have a question specifically, but I guess I have an assertion that kind of follows on with your last question, Josh, about the smallest viable audience. And I think with regards to podcasting, it's somewhat dependent upon what is your stated goal, the what is it for? If the what is it for is I want to make a full-time living off of being a podcaster, that's a different number than if the what is it for is I want to make an impact and change people's perspective or change people's lives. And for example, just the work that Lisa's done has actually impacted me and changed me and changed my perspective on things just by listening to her podcast. And I have no idea what her actual numbers are in terms of downloads, but if she was doing it specifically for an impact, she's had that. So that's, I guess it's just a matter of what is it that your end goal is and what you want to measure, and that viable audience number might be different depending upon what it is that you're expecting to get out of it.
I have a couple of things to say, but I'm making silence here purposefully. So, other
Go for it, yeah, or else I'll just keep talking. So please, Andre.
Minimum viable audience, just, to make the bridge between what I mentioned, question before and, to that conversation, the way that I'm telling my partner in this, he lives in London, I live in Austin, and our podcast is about entrepreneurship in Portuguese language, right? One of the ways that we describe this that probably tells the entire story in my perspective, right? And I'm just beginning, is first moment is the moment of generosity. This is when, you're learning about yourself, which stories you want to tell, which stories you want to feature. How do you do that? What is your format? How do you deliver that? What's unique about you? And you're showing up consistently, right? First moment, generosity. And that little moment, your minimum audience, viable audience is going to be pretty small, right? By the dozens. And from there, the promise is, there's going to be growth, because then you're going to be having this larger body of work in terms of SEO, in terms of content, in terms of, you're experiencing getting that model really to work. and emphasizing the elements of all that, that is really what people are looking for, right? Stories that connect with them, stories that inspire them to, other stories, to, to do things, to be a better person, right? So in other words, to me, minimum viable audience is actually consequence. It's not a design criteria, right? But there might be other people that have, the mechanics to make that work. Definitely pay attention to what that people is telling you.
I actually want to chime in on this. This is Lana. I am listening to this message and to Seth's message on the minimum viable audience, and also comparing it to something that you hear and see from large podcasters, whether it is Pat Flynn or Amy Porterfield or Tim Ferriss, people that are consistently trying to grow their lists and their audience. And I think one of the reasons why I'm trying to compare these two different pathways is I understand the concept of impact, but there is also something about the fact that we have only 24 hours a day, and that there is this new shiny thing that we're all, there is just such a diversity of podcasts and resources in general, and that it's, even though you might be having this audience, I do not believe that this audience is with you on a weekly basis. I think that people explore a variety of different resources. And so once again, this is where a lot of these other podcasters say, well, if you continue growing your audience, you continue like keeping just few of those people that consistently follow you on a weekly basis. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but just sort of struggling a little bit between these two concepts. If you have any thoughts of wisdom, you or Frederick, I would love to hear them.
Or even anybody else, right? So look, I'm beginning into this. I'm consuming all that I can, so I can not necessarily play the game, but like, be smart about, what I choose to do and focus on in terms of podcasting, because it's a lot of work, right? I think there is one thing that is, pretty telling, is that we listen to like, these major people, Gary Vee, Tim Ferriss, Seth Godin, and these guys have a captive audience of millions, right? That really pay attention to all they do, right? To the point that like, Seth can ship a book that, weighs several pounds, and people are going to be paying top dollar to get that book, right? He doesn't need to go to Amazon or anything. He does, hey, I'm going to be doing 600, 8,000 of these, good luck, buying your copy. This is the price, right? So they're operating at a level in which, it's very different from us. We're still trying to build that captive audience, right? So in that regard, I think it's better to listen, if you want to grow, better to listen to people that actually started on the same path and how they did that. So in terms of, two, upcoming guys, let's put it this way, Josh, you asked me before, there's a guy called Nick Loper. He wrote, like a guide to marketing podcasts. And he referenced another guy whose name is Matt Giovanishi from the, Money Lab, and who also built another very interesting definitive guide for podcast marketing. So I tend, when it comes to that, to like, what you need to do right here, right now, I tend to listen much more to those guys. When it comes to the vision and how you should be approaching the entire thing, how you're going to be emotionally committing to this, I tend to think that, maybe the Seth and Tim and other guys, might be giving you a pretty good advice, because, that's what they do on a daily basis. They show up and they're committed to that thing that they're talking about. So maybe, Lana, that's one perspective in which you can marry, and make the best of both worlds.
Thank you, Andre. I don't know if you had a chance, and everybody else had a chance, to listen to one of Tim Ferriss's latest episodes on how to be successful podcasting, but it was a very
I think you're gone,
I
Lana.
lost Lana.
Yeah. Let's talk about, let's give a number, and that was shared by Faye from Alt MBA. Here's a benchmark. You get in something in the range of $250 to $400 for every 10,000 downloads that you get from an episode. So that is, the traditional way of monetizing a podcast, right? And one in which someone might be tempted to measure success, based on that. So you need a very large audience in order to be able to make $500. So that is one of the things that we're all kind of discussing into our podcasters channel around hey, what else can we do here? Are there other ways of generating revenue, monetizing? And by the way, is that the right success metric? So a lot to think about that too.
Andre, I wanted to add something to that. When I started my podcast, it really was an experiment. I didn't look at what anybody was doing. I can probably still get criticized all over the place for that, but I use it as a platform to experiment. And I try all different things on it. Some are successful, some aren't, but I have absolutely gotten coaching clients from it, which honestly I hadn't really expected. I used it as a means for talking to people I wanted to have a conversation with. It gives you that platform and say, hey, can you come on the podcast and that sort of thing. But I've absolutely gotten customers from my podcast. So it depends on what it is that you're using it for. Again, my focus was to experiment with it, pure experimentation. And I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it.
That is wonderful to hear, Lisa. First, that approach of experimenting, in the end, we're all experimenting, right? Whatever we're doing, even if we believe, we're the masters of our trade, we're all experimenting. So, that is helpful, right? There is a space for everyone, but really with this talk today, part of the assertion that audio is the next thing is for people to realize that podcasts, you shouldn't be looking at this from the way of making money. It's going to be, it takes a while, right? That's probably what people are finding out. Podcasts are really content marketing, right? And I was even placing, as in your owned media, in which, you can tell people the way you think. And people can make they can choose, they can say, you know what? No, you're full of it. I do not want to talk to you. Do not want to listen to you. Bye. I'm going to be devoting my 5 hours and I'm going to be listening to other, folks that I have, giving other priorities. So that is also part of that, approach podcasting as content marketing for yourself as a thought leader, right? And you're already getting success there, Lisa, right? So, what better example of, picking the right success metric and doing things, in a way that, people are paying attention to, right? Your experimentation is worth paying attention to. And, some people come back and they want to be clients.
We have a few more minutes. Last call, as they would say in other venues. A few smirks out there. No? Well, Andre, thank you very much for your generosity and helping all of us understand a little bit more of the history behind podcasting, as well as the mediums and how we can use this and why we should use this. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks again for the invitation. My parting thought is, we spoke about music, entertainment, right? So, less call here, right? You don't, you do not need to go home, but you cannot stay here. I think that's the bottom line of today's conversation, right?
Well,
time.
Oh, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I think we have like 30 more seconds. This is not just for Alt MBA anymore, and we have opened this up to meet those fringes, right, and kind of face that tension of going, who can I reach out to and help with this generosity? It's another way to kind of promote your work as well. So we're doing that. We've started the landing pages and getting your name and information out there. So hopefully we can do just like Lisa said, where we can drive traffic to your work, and we can go from there. So that's it. We will be back next week. And since you're here, who do we have next week? We have Chris, right? Chris is on the line. I believe we have Chris. Or no, Jason. Sorry, Jason Andrews is up next. We're talking about financial budgeting hack. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. Bye-bye.